Hi there. It's hard to introduce this video, and I'm not even sure whether this is part of my vlog series or vlog supplement or what, really. Um, I've just been taking stock of everything I've been doing on this channel, and and taking stock of my progress or my spiritual path or whatever you want to call it. um, and trying to again to categorize the different responses and aspects of the Gnostic spiritual path. Um, Certainly, of course, as you know, this channel is dedicated to the expression of ideas and analysis of Gnosticism and what Gnosis means and is. There's analysis of Gnostic cosmology and theology, and a certain amount of description of original ideas concerning Gnosticism, which is interesting. But of course, ideas, are to a penny, really. You can have 70 ideas before breakfast, sort of thing, but they don't mean anything by the middle of the day, sort of thing. And that's and that's kind of a feature of air or intellect, uh, which is sort of like the airy fairy, kind of diffuse ideas, brainstorming sessions, and sometimes quite deep analysis. But there's always something about ideas that split the cosmos into thesis and antithesis, or antithesis and synthesis. So you've got proposal, and you've got like debate, and you've got people saying they don't agree with you, or people saying they do agree with you. So there's a certain degree of partisan thinking comes into it as well. And of course, egotism, as people have their pet ideas, and knowledge is power, and they feel kind of powerful with their ideas. And when people challenge those ideas, they challenge the personal power of the individual espousing those ideas. So, there's a great amount of limitation attached to the intellect, and to analysis, and describing your thoughts about things. There's a great deal of bluster and huff and puff as well, really. But sometimes you get real genuine insights into things, and I often think sometimes the raw information that you get on Gnosticism and spirituality is something which we might call in Kabbalistic terms receivings. So you actually do receive information which pertains to the truth. So it's not just sort of philosophical rambling or philosophical analysis, or a sort of university debating chamber, but it actually is some things which do originate from the source itself, and sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two, between what is sort of like intellectual ramblings and receiving of raw information. So that's another feature, I suppose, of air and intellect and conscious thought, discursive thought, one might say, as well. Perhaps it's necessary, therefore, to learn to distinguish between things that come from the source as raw information and insight, and things which are more speculative and argumentative, as it were, and rhetorical even. So that's something that perhaps one has to think about as well, how to distinguish between these two categories. And then we come over to something which perhaps is even more tricky and more prone to self-deception, which of course is water, which traditionally refers to emotion. And here I put down ecstatic trance, and sort of emotional response to cultivating a connection to the divine, and feeling for God, and I love you, God, the four holy words, and the effect of those four holy words on consciousness and on feelings. So we're talking about effective development, cultivation of agape, and which is love for the divine. So that's quite interesting as well. But then, of course, feelings are even more tricky and deceptive than thoughts and than the intellect, because we're not talking about intuition here. We're just talking about feelings. And feelings come and feelings go. And of course, if you're thinking about the three aspects of the body-mind complex, the nous, psyche, and soma, psyche part, which is the emotional part, is very bound up with soma. So, the two are kind of a spectrum, kind of run into each other as well, sort of bleed into each other, like watercolors. And so often, if you're getting a virus or something, you're coming down with the flu, then you're going to be in a cranky mood, and that's going to affect your uh, your emotions generally, and then perhaps affect your or diminish or distill the cultivation of agape in some way, even if it's only on a temporary basis. You bang your elbow and you forget all about God. You forget all about the transcendental realm, because you're plunged into soma, you're plunged into pain and discomfort and shock and anger and all the rest of it. So feelings, so the ecstatic trance that we might get during a ritual or a meditation or even a contemplation of the Gnostic cosmos, is very ethereal, really. It's something which is here today and gone tomorrow, sort of thing. It's like a butterfly hard to catch, or like a night moth or something like that. And so, and also it's hard to express your inner emotions with regard to agape to other people, and other people may not be particularly interested in your emotions, apart from those recollected in tranquility, which is where you express your emotions artistically. And then it becomes a question of how to express your art. And 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. So once you've got a musical idea, for example, then you have to manifest that musical idea, and that takes a lot of hard work. From the composition to mixing to mastering, and all the rest of it. Not to mention marketing and getting it out there to people. So that's all hard work. And the original emotion has all disappeared as you attempt to express your former emotions about God in an artistic way, and it becomes then a problem of logistics, ergonomics, and skills and experience and all the rest of it, and schooling, you know. So that's kind of like almost the polar opposite of ideas, and yet all in a way, emotions are about as ethereal and here today, gone tomorrow, as air, as the airy quality of the intellect, actually. So then we come on to the fire element, and this is a very interesting element, actually. I call it the fire of forgetting. You know yourself that if you're studying for an exam, if you've got your end of term exams, very often it's a good idea not to keep sweating away at revising, but to revise in discrete little blocks, and to come back and go and do something else like gardening or watching telly or something, playing a computer game or something like that. Then when you come back to it all fresh, you can actually your productivity actually increases, and often you get insights, or you remember more about the material you have to revise in your mind, as a result of sort of forgetting it temporarily. And indeed, sometimes, you come back to a problem, and you can find the solution to it. It's staring you in the face, but you just couldn't see the wood for the trees before. And you're so consciously trying to do something, and pushing back the boundaries, and in a conscious sort of way, and not allowing the unconscious, or the subconscious, I should say, to do its work, which is basically solve the problem. People often look doing cryptic crosswords. Often, you just got to look at the clue, and allow a sort of subconscious analysis to occur. Because consciously the clue makes no sense whatsoever, and however you analyze it, the solution refuses to come. So sometimes you just look at something, and you just have to see the solution. And I call this the forgetting fires, because it's like, you just allow the subconscious to take over in its mysterious, strange, mystical way, to provide you with a solution to a problem, or basically give you more vitality to complete a task. When you come back to it all kind of fresh, and having allowed the sort of what they call latent learning to occur. So, the fire of consciousness is burnt up in the forgetting process, and then when you come back to something, is the solution is there, or the vitality to complete the task is there when it wasn't there before. So that's a very interesting thing. Obviously, that's totally beyond your conscious control. It's not even guaranteed to work, and it could even work in a way that is outside your definition of what is supposed to be success as well. So we'll talk about even more. The element of fire is even more ethereal than the element of air and the element of water. So that's interesting. And then finally we come to Earth, which basically I ascribe the rule, what I call the rule, which is basically the religio. The religion means what you kind of live by every day, what you do every day. Whether it's meditation or contemplation, or a simple breathing exercise, or a daily prayer, or a daily ritual, or even a daily contemplation, something you do every day. And the basic point about this is that because you have intentionality, you intend to do something in the air element, and you have an emotional response to that. You say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to really do that," and then you may have to let it be consumed by the fires of forgetting. But ultimately, you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is, kind of. You're going to have to bring your intentionality into manifestation through practice, and that's what I've got here. So it's like, and that again, you can do. You can keep a blog or a record of your progress, but you've actually got to do something. And it's kind of sort of one of the ironies of the worlds of the Demiurge, that in order to manifest intentionality, you have to do something. And we're talking about a spiritual path, but we have to do something on that spiritual path. It's almost like a contradiction in terms, really. You're thinking, well, if it's spirituality, we don't have to do anything. And indeed, sometimes you let go of doing, and you let it be consumed by the fires of forgetting. But for the most part, you're actually doing something in order to manifest the intentionality, in order to, I don't know, demonstrate to the transcendental realm or element or algorithm or God or whatever you want to call it, that your heart is in it, that you're prepared to do something every day, however small that something is, in order to regulate your life by the principles that you espouse, that you espoused in the analysis of the truth, which took place in the air element, and you're cultivating your emotional response, your agapic, as it were, your agape response. But again, that isn't enough unless you're going to do it every day, sometimes up against various obstacles that are inner obstacles and outer obstacles. Don't forget the Demiurge and his agents don't want you to develop your own religious path, your spiritual path, your rule, your religio. They want you to stop. They don't want you to abandon it. And sometimes, ironically enough, it's good to abandon things and let the fires of forgetting burn, which in fact it suits your purpose. So sometimes you see, the demiurge and his agents come along and they tempt you away from the path, and that's all part of the path. You see, that's all part of the program. In fact, little do they know that their obstacles they throw up in your way are actually, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. With actually, that's part of the spiritual program. In actual fact. I mean, they think that they're tripping you up with a banana skin, but in actual fact, you need to fall over. You need to fall over that banana skin. You need to trip up. You need to abandon things for a certain time in order for the fires of forgetting to actually do their thing, and for latent learning and for the subconscious to do its thing, you see. But generally speaking, you do have to do some work every day, however little that bit of work is. I mean, it's not quantity, it's quality that actually counts. But you do have to, put your money where your mouth is, sort of thing. You do actually have to manifest your intention somehow on the physical plane through physical practice, through regular practice, even if it's meditation that I'm actually talking about here, and not actual physical ritual, although physical ritual could actually be quite a good way of doing it. In fact, you do a simple ritual every day, which expresses to yourself your previous analysis of Gnostic cosmology, for example, to generate this feeling of agape. And you do some simple ritual every day to actually sort of create, as it were, the conditions for agape to be experienced on one hand, and also perhaps to gain new insights on the other. So I've kind of like joined all these together to form a sort of pentagram, and we have here at the top here we have spirit. Traditionally, spirit was at the top of the pentagram, although it could be the bottom of a reverse pentagram for that matter. It would be the same thing, really, ultimately. And you've got the sort of dance of energy between earth, air, fire, and water. Throughout your life, throughout your day, you're going to observe the sort of dance of energy between these two things. You're going to see your moods go up and down. You're going to see insights come and go. You're going to see a complete, perhaps an abandonment of the spiritual path for a time, in order for the fires of forgetting to do their thing. You're going to see yourself doing something regularly every day, for as long as you can, before the fires of forgetting have to be kindled, which often they have to be kindled, well, from time to time anyway, because the band is getting stale, kind of thing, and it needs a rest. So there are periods of action and activity, and there are periods of non-activity in your life, and that's okay. And you'll probably find that in the long run, once you've committed to the spiritual path, that all these things will balance each other out in the long run, and you'll be able to look back on your life, on your spiritual life, and say, yeah, but, the elements were actually pretty balanced throughout my life. It didn't appear to be at the time. Maybe there was some perception of imbalance going on, but ultimately, hey, it was a balanced spiritual path that I was following after all, because we are talking about psyche and soma. But we're also talking about nous or nos or nous, which is the transcendental part of the psyche soma individual, and we're talking about that expanding and contracting and offering you a helping hand, and sometimes abandoning you altogether, which is what happens in the fires of forgetting, which I've already referred to. And sometimes this can actually, we're talking about the transcendental element. I mean, the psyche and the soma part of the individual are merely the vehicles through which nous, the transcendental, expresses itself in the midst of the world of the Demiurge. Ruled as they are by fear and greed and ego. So it's all good. It's all good. And sometimes you need to kind of remember this. You might come back to this little presentation from time to time and say, it's all good. It's okay. Don't get hung up on things. Don't say, "Oh, I'm too intellectual, I'm too emotional, or I'm too lazy, or I'm too fanatical on my religious rule." You're not too anything, or if you are too much to something, you'll have something. Your energy will come up to balance it all out again. So if you're too lazy, I suppose, you're going to kick up the pants to restart your rule, and if you're too bogged down in the rule, the daily tasks, you'll get a sort of attack of laziness, which is okay because that's the fires of forgetting being kindled. If you're too intellectual, too analytical, like I've been on this channel, then you'll want to explore your emotional response, your agape. And if you're too much agape, well, something will come along basically to, you'll stub your toe or you'll bang your elbow, which will make all those, highfalutin agape emotions dissolve into pain and anger and whatever. So, there is balance in the universe. There is balance. And there is a adjustment, as it were, which is the modern name of the card justice, which is the scales, the balance. In the old tarot deck, it was called justice or justice, and sometimes it's called adjustment as well, because it's not a sort of moral thing. It's not even a conscious thing. It's just the way things go in this particular dimension, which is part of the transcendental realm until such time as the two will separate, and the transcendental will go its way, and your nous will follow that path of the transcendental, and the soma and the psyche will probably implode, as indeed the worlds, the demiurge, will probably implode or basically come to nothing in the end, and dissolve into nothingness, and the whole cycle will be complete. And some say it all starts all over again, but that's a different video altogether. Anyway, so the spiritual, I suppose this is really about the spiritual path and about the different aspects of the spiritual path, and the big conclusion really is go with the flow and don't get hung up about where you should be, which element you should be adhering to or worshipping or something, or or bowing down to or following religiously. It doesn't really work like that. It's not a sort of bowing down process, as it were. It's an energy. We're talking about energy work here. So that's a little bit, it's not sort of like, going before the potentate and bowing your head before the emperor. The nature doesn't work like that. And if you study Taoism, you'll know that for sure. It's a dance of energy. It's a flow of energy. It's you are where you are supposed to be at any point during the day or any point during your life, even though you may not recognize it. In fact, 90% of the time you won't recognize it, but that's where you will be. And I think one can take a little bit of comfort sometimes in that. And I know I take comfort in that. So if I don't create many more videos, that's okay. Or if I express my emotions, that's okay. Or if I abandon this entire channel for 6 months, that's okay. And or if I, keep a record of my daily exercise, spiritual exercises, for your inspiration, that's okay as well. So it's all good, and I'll leave you on that positive note. Well, I hope it is positive anyway.